She was on her knees, in front of 350 people, begging a janitor to marry her. Victoria Ashford, billionaire, CEO, one of the most powerful women in America, knelt on the marble floor of her own penthouse ballroom, tears streaming down her face, her $10,000 gown pooling around her like spilled emerald ink. The man she was begging? Marcus Chen, 47 years old, wore a faded janitor's uniform, earned $12 an hour mopping her floors, and he looked at her like she'd just asked him to jump off a cliff. "Please," Victoria whispered, her voice cracking. "Marry me." The room exploded. Gasps, whispers, phones raised, cameras flashing. Boston's elite stood frozen, unable to process what they were seeing. But Marcus didn't say yes. Instead, he said something that made every person in that room go silent. "If you're serious," Marcus said, his voice low and cold, "then you'll meet one condition. Just one. And if you can't do it, then this," he gestured at the ballroom, at her, at everything, "is nothing but a performance." Victoria's breath caught. "What condition?" Marcus leaned closer, his eyes hard, unreadable. "I'll tell you tomorrow. 6 a.m. Sub-level 3 parking garage. Come alone. No security, no cameras, no witnesses, just you. And if you don't show up, I'll know you were never serious." 7. He turned and walked toward the service door. "Wait," Victoria called after him. But Marcus didn't stop. He pushed through the door and disappeared, leaving her kneeling on the floor, trembling, humiliated, and utterly desperate. The crowd erupted into chaos. But here's what no one knew. Marcus Chen wasn't just a janitor, and the condition he was about to demand would expose a secret Victoria had been hiding for 6 months. A secret that could destroy everything she'd built. The champagne glass had shattered just moments before. Victoria had been standing at the center of the room, surrounded by Boston's wealthiest elite, when she saw him walk past the service entrance. Marcus, the man she'd been watching for half a year, the man who made her question everything about her life. She didn't plan to propose. Not there. Not then. But something inside her snapped. Some desperate need to stop pretending, to stop hiding behind boardrooms and billion-dollar deals and the perfect image she'd constructed for the world. So she called out his name. And when 350 heads turned to look, when the orchestra stopped playing, when the entire room fell silent, she did the unthinkable. She proposed. To a janitor, in front of everyone who mattered in her world. Her best friend Catherine grabbed her arm as Marcus disappeared through the door. "Victoria, what are you doing? Do you have any idea what you just—" "I know exactly what I did," Victoria said quietly, pulling her arm free. "He's a janitor. I don't care. The press will destroy you. Let them." Catherine stared at her, eyes wide with disbelief. "Who are you?" "Because the Victoria Ashford I know would never." "The Victoria Ashford you know," Victoria interrupted, her voice trembling, "is dying inside. Has been for years. And I'm done pretending I'm not." She walked out of the ballroom, leaving behind 350 shocked faces and a life she could no longer recognize as her own. That night, Victoria couldn't sleep. She stood on her penthouse balcony overlooking Boston Harbor, the city lights glittering like fallen stars across the dark water. The wind was cold against her skin, but she welcomed it. Anything to feel something real. Her phone buzzed constantly, text after text. Calls from board members, investors, reporters. Everyone wanted to know. Had she lost her mind? Maybe she had. But for the first time in 10 years, she felt alive. Victoria thought about the first time she saw Marcus. 6 months ago, she'd been walking through the building late at night after a 17-hour workday. Everyone had gone home except the cleaning crew. She was heading to the parking garage when she heard a voice. Soft, patient, kind, She turned a corner and saw Marcus kneeling beside a young security guard who was crying. The guard's hands were shaking, his face buried in his palms. "I don't know what to do," the guard was saying. "My daughter's tuition is due next week, and I'm 3,000 short. I've been working doubles, but it's not enough. She's going to have to drop out, and it's my fault." "Hey," Marcus said gently, putting a hand on the young man's shoulder. "Look at me. This isn't your fault. You're doing everything you can. That's what matters. But she's losing her scholarship. Have you talked to the financial aid office? Asked about payment plans? They said no. Then you talk to them again. You bring documentation of every expense you have. You show them you're trying. And if they still say no, you ask to speak to a supervisor. You keep climbing that ladder until someone listens." The guard looked up, eyes red. "You think that'll work?" "I know it will, because people want to help. They just need to see that you're fighting for it." Marcus pulled out his wallet and handed the guard several bills. "Here. It's not much, but it's something. And I want you to promise me you'll keep fighting." The guard stared at the money, tears spilling over. "I can't take this." "Yes, you can, because someone did the same for me once. And now, I'm passing it on." Victoria stood in the shadows, watching this interaction, and something inside her chest cracked open. This man, this janitor in a worn uniform, earning barely above minimum wage, was giving away money he probably needed himself, was spending his break counseling a stranger, was showing more humanity in 5 minutes than she'd seen in years of corporate boardrooms. She started watching him after that. Not obsessively, not intrusively, just noticing. The way he helped an elderly woman carry her groceries to her car. The way he spent his lunch breaks reading real books, not his phone sitting on the loading dock with his back against the concrete wall. The way he spoke to people, any people, as if they mattered. One day she saw him explaining something to a temp worker who'd been struggling with the inventory system. His voice was patient, methodical, clear, the kind of voice that belonged to a teacher, or an engineer, or someone who'd once done something far more complex than mopping floors. Victoria began asking questions. Discreetly. Through HR records she wasn't supposed to access. Through background checks that crossed ethical lines. Marcus Chen, 47 years old, hired 6 years ago. No criminal record, no references, no previous employment listed beyond independent contractor. It was as if he'd appeared out of nowhere 6 years ago and decided to become invisible. But Victoria could see him. And the more she watched, the more she realized this man was hiding. Not from the law, not from debt collectors, from himself, from a past too painful to face. She understood that, because she was hiding too. Victoria had built an empire, $3 billion, 14 buildings across 6 countries, a reputation that made competitors nervous and investors eager. She was on the cover of Forbes, Fortune, Time. She was invited to speak at Davos, at the UN, at every major conference that mattered. But she was utterly, devastatingly alone. She'd never married. Never had children. Never even had a relationship that lasted longer than 6 months. She told herself it was because she was too busy, too focused, too ambitious. The truth was simpler and more painful. She didn't know how to let people in. Her parents had died when she was 19. Car accident, sudden, brutal. She flew home to find her childhood house empty, her parents' bedroom exactly as they'd left it that morning, coffee cups still in the sink. She'd stood in that kitchen and made a decision. She would never be vulnerable like that again. Never love something so deeply that losing it could destroy her. So she built walls, thick ones, made of money and power and success. And she told herself those walls were protection, but they were a prison. Now, at 42, She had everything except what mattered. She had wealth, but no warmth, power, but no peace, success, but no one to share it with, until she saw Marcus, and recognized in him the same loneliness, the same walls, the same desperate need to stay invisible, because being seen meant risking pain. But there was something else in Marcus, too, something she'd lost, a kindness that hadn't been destroyed by whatever had broken him, a humanity that persisted despite the pain. She wanted that, not to take it from him, but to learn it, to remember what it felt like to be human instead of a machine designed to generate profit. So she decided to do something crazy. She would offer him everything. Not pity, not charity, but a genuine partnership, a chance for both of them to stop hiding. And if he said no, then at least she'd tried. At least she'd been brave enough to be honest about what she wanted. That's what led to the ballroom, to the proposal, to Marcus walking away and leaving her kneeling on the floor. Now, standing on her balcony at 3 a.m, Victoria made a decision. She would go to that parking garage. She would meet whatever condition Marcus demanded, and she would prove to him and to herself that she meant every word. The next morning, at 5:45 a.m., Victoria stood in sublevel 3 of her own building's parking garage. She wore jeans she'd had to dig out from the back of her closet, a simple white sweater, and sneakers. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail. No makeup, no jewelry, except her mother's ring. The garage was cold, dimly lit, smelling of concrete and motor oil. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows across rows of expensive cars. She found Marcus near the elevator banks, mopping the floor with slow, methodical strokes. Surprise flickered across his face, quickly replaced by that same guarded expression. "You came," he said. "I told you I was serious." Marcus set the mop aside, studying her. Really studying her. As if trying to see past the billionaire CEO to the person underneath. "Why?" he asked finally. "Because 6 months ago I was sitting in my office at 2 a.m, staring at financial reports showing record profits, and I realized I couldn't remember the last time I actually felt anything, joy, sadness, anger, anything real. I was just numb." She took a step closer. "And then I saw you. And I saw someone who'd been through hell, I don't know what kind. But I could see it in your eyes, and you were still kind, still patient, still treating people like they mattered. And I thought, I want to learn how to do that again." Marcus looked down at his hands. Rough, calloused. The hands of someone who'd worked hard for very little. "You don't know anything about me," he said quietly. "Then tell me. That's why I'm here." Marcus was silent for a long moment. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a photograph, worn at the edges, soft from being touched too many times. He handed it to her. Victoria looked down at the image. Marcus, younger, smiling, his arm around a beautiful woman. Beside them, a little girl with missing front teeth and eyes full of light. "That's Maya," Marcus said, his voice barely above a whisper. "My daughter. And that's Keisha." Victoria's chest tightened. She knew, looking at his face, that this story didn't have a happy ending. "Maya got sick when she was 9, Marcus continued. "Leukemia. Acute lymphoblastic leukemia. I was a chemical engineer then. Good job. Good insurance. We thought we'd be okay." He took the photo back, staring at it. "But cancer doesn't care about your plans. 2 years of treatment, experimental therapies, clinical trials. We spent everything. I borrowed from everyone." Keisha worked 3 jobs while I sat with Maya in the hospital, watching her fade away. His voice cracked. "She died on a Tuesday morning. Looked at me and said, 'I'm tired, Daddy.' And I held her while she fell asleep. And she never woke up. Tears streamed down Victoria's face. "Keisha and I couldn't survive it," Marcus said. "The grief was too big. Every time we looked at each other, all we saw was Maya. We divorced a year later. I lost my job because I couldn't function. Lost the house. Lost everything except this photo." He looked up at Victoria, his eyes red. "I've been cleaning floors for 6 years because it's the only job that lets me stay invisible. The only place where nobody asks questions or expects anything from me. I just exist. That's all I can manage." Victoria reached out and took his hand. "You're not invisible to me. You never were. Free. Why would someone like you want someone like me? Because you know what real loss looks like? Because you kept your humanity even when you had every reason to lose it? Because I don't want someone perfect. I want someone real." Marcus stared at their joined hands. "I told you I had a condition." "Yes, here it is." He met her eyes. "If we do this, I won't be your project. I won't be the broken thing you fix to feel good about yourself. I want to earn my place in your life. I want to go back to school, finish my degree, get back into engineering. I want to contribute something real." Victoria nodded. "Okay. What else?" "I want to start a foundation, in Maya's name, for families dealing with childhood cancer. I want her life to mean something beyond the pain." "Yes, absolutely. And one more thing." His grip tightened on her hand. "I want you to be honest with me, always, about everything. No games, no pretending. If you're having a bad day, tell me. If you regret this, tell me. I've had enough lies in my life. I need the truth, even when it hurts." Victoria felt something shift deep in her chest. "I can do that. All of it." "Then ask me again," Marcus said quietly. Victoria Ashford, billionaire CEO, dropped to one knee on the cold concrete floor of a parking garage. She looked up at Marcus Chen, janitor, widower, survivor, and spoke from the most honest place she'd ever accessed. "Marcus Chen, will you marry me? Will you teach me how to be human again? Will you let me help you rebuild what you lost? Will you take a chance on someone who's just as broken as you are?" Marcus looked down at this woman who'd humiliated herself publicly for him, who'd shown up at 6 a.m. in jeans and sneakers, who was offering not pity, but partnership, and something inside him that had been dead for 8 years began, tentatively, to wake up. "Yes," he whispered. "I will." They held each other in that dim parking garage. Two people who'd forgotten how to hope, choosing to try again. 3 months later, they married in a small community center in Roxbury. 50 guests. No orchestra. No ballroom. Just real people. Real food. Real laughter. When the officiant asked if anyone objected, a voice called out, "I do." Keisha stood at the back of the room, thin, gray-haired, crying. Marcus went pale. But Keisha walked forward, tears streaming down her face. "I object," she said, "because I need to apologize. For leaving when you needed me. For letting grief destroy us." She turned to Victoria. "And I need to tell you something about this man." She smiled through her tears. "He's the most loyal, most loving person I've ever known. And Maya would have liked you. She would have wanted him to be happy." Keisha hugged Marcus. "You have my blessing. Both of you." The ceremony continued. And when Marcus said, "I do," he meant it with every broken piece of his heart. 6 months into their marriage, Marcus was appointed Director of Engineering Innovation at Ashford Holdings. When board members objected, he presented a prototype, a wearable device for monitoring children undergoing chemotherapy, reducing pain while maximizing treatment effectiveness. 3 hospitals agreed to trials immediately. The room gave him a standing ovation. That evening, they attended the ribbon cutting for the Maya Chen Foundation, a state-of-the-art support center for families dealing with childhood cancer. Marcus didn't give a speech. He simply said, "This is for every parent who's sat in a hospital room begging for one more day. You're not alone." 2 years later, Victoria woke to find Marcus crying, holding a positive pregnancy test. "I had a dream," he said. "Maya told me it's okay to love again. She said she's watching over us." Their daughter was born on a snowy December morning. They named her Hope Keisha Maya Chen Ashford. Hope, for what they'd rebuilt. Keisha, for the blessing they'd received. Maya, so her name would live forever. 5 years later, Dr. Marcus Chen stood at MIT, addressing medical students. "I want to tell you about losing everything," he said, "and learning that what we do after tragedy defines us, how we rebuild, who we let help us, whether grief destroys us or transforms us." The students gave him a standing ovation. That evening, Marcus came home to find Victoria in the garden, pushing Hope on a swing while their son Thomas played nearby. The sun was setting, painting everything gold. "Good day?" Victoria asked. "The best," Marcus replied, taking her hand. They sat together, watching their children play, listening to their laughter, breathing in the ordinary miracle of a life rebuilt from ashes. Marcus looked at 2 photographs on his desk that night. Maya, forever 9, and his family now, Victoria, Hope, and Thomas. "I kept my promise," he whispered. "I kept living. Thank you for giving me permission." He turned off the light and went upstairs, where his second chance at life was waiting. Because second chances don't arrive with trumpets. Sometimes they come in parking garages at 6 a.m. Sometimes they require saying yes when everything inside screams no. And sometimes, if you're brave enough, they give you a life more beautiful than you ever imagined. A life that proves love always deserves a second chance.